Isn't it the case, Richard, that Brexit has led not just to political chaos, but to the UK becoming the laughingstock of the world?
Yes, is a simple word.
Richard Tice, chair of the Reform Party.
What about your current party, the Brexit Party? Nigel Farage is a man, the most famous Brexiter in Britain, I think it's fair to say. You've compared him to Gandhi and Mandela in this very chamber, I believe.
Yeah. And actually, and I have to say, in terms of delivering lasting change,
okay,
absolutely.
Okay.
Well, let's be honest. Well, Brexit is a huge opportunity, a seismic shift in the way this country is going to be run.
Let me just finish my question.
That is lasting change.
Let me just finish my question before they turn in their grave.
And frankly, a gift from God for the progressive left. And in this video, we're going to be going over those gifts Richard keeps on giving.
James McMurdoch.
This James McMurdoch, the James McMurdoch who is now an MP for Reform and has, quite frankly, a checkered history. And Richard tried to defend him.
Because court documents obtained by the Times have recently shown he was jailed for kicking his girlfriend around 4 times, according to those court documents.
That I don't think is an accurate representation of what the documents do say, point number 1. Point number 2, we are a great Christian nation. Are you seriously saying that if someone makes a bad mistake in life, age 19, that there's no redemption, they are doomed as a sinner forever? No. The whole point of Christianity is a sense of, if you've done something wrong, you pay your price, and at the end of that sentence, whatever it is, then, in a sense, you've done your bit. You've served your punishment, whatever it is, and good luck. And isn't it actually the alternative? The opposite is true. Isn't it remarkable that an individual had a bad issue at a very young age, but has gone full circle? And doesn't it show actually to other young people, look, bad stuff can happen. You can make bad judgments. You can get things badly wrong. But many years later, actually, you can do really well. He had a great job and end up as a member of Parliament. I think that's a good thing.
OK, I absolutely understand the point you're making about redemption, right? People shouldn't be written off for life. But his statement before the Times piece said, we argued and I pushed her. She fell over and she was hurt. The court documents seen by the Times said that he kicked her. I mean, you can talk about redemption, but surely part of redemption is acknowledging what you did, being upfront about what you did, and only then can you move on and be truly sorry, right? I mean, it sounds like there is a pretty major discrepancy.
You can have a dispute about what actually happened. The bottom line is...
So what's he told... No, look, this is so important, OK? So what has James McMurdoch told you that happened?
Look, my understanding is different to what the Times have reported.
So what is your understanding?
It actually doesn't matter.
I wasn't there.
No, I'll tell you why it doesn't, because it comes back. The law is the law. The law ruled that he had transgressed, and he was punished. He served his punishment. And
but if you're asking people to vote for you, people have the right to know what you've done in the past,
but equally,
what you've been
hang on.
jailed for.
So what you're really saying is, what you're suggesting is, well, if you did one thing, then you're a sinner for life.
It's really important. That's absolutely not what I'm suggesting. I'm saying that if people are voting for an MP, they have a right to know.
And we also have
that's right, isn't it?
But we also have a right.
So you do accept that? There's a transparency and a truth, and then people can make up their own minds in democracy.
The transparency is we have a right to a difference of opinion, OK? And one individual's opinion as to what happened, OK, who was there, by the way. So the Times were not there, the court documents were not set. So can I suggest that actually the individual might be closer to the truth because he was there?
What's he told you happened?
I'm not going to go into individuals. What I'm going to say is, at the end of the day, people made a decision in the courts. He served the punishment that he was given.
For what?
What
did he do?
And look, we live in a Christian nation, and we believe in redemption. You've done your bit. You've done your sentence, and you move on. And I think that's a great thing.
What did he do?
Look, at the end of the day...
Because I don't know what he's supposed to be redeemed for at the minute. What did he do?
Well, look, the court made a decision. We rely on the court judgment, right? And you can have different opinions as to what... Look, if he agrees or disagrees with that, that's one thing. At the end of the day, the court ruled, the court made a decision, and he served his time, and now he's had a great career, and I think that's a really positive sign, where you can say to someone, if you do something stupid, you do something bad, you make a terrible mistake, but actually you can come back from it. And that, I think, is a really constructive, optimistic thing.
If it's a good thing, why don't you just say what he's done?
Because I wasn't there on the night, and there's a disagreement about it.
What's he told? Must have told you something, though. I mean, you're serving in Parliament
Yeah,
with
so
him,
I'm
right?
on his side. I disagree with what else is saying.
So you don't think he kicked her then? Is that what you're saying?
I'm trusting James. He's bang on the money, and I think that what he says is right. He was there. The court wasn't there. The Times weren't there.
Well, the victim
And
was there as well, right?
Yeah, and they're going to have a disagreement. But at the end of the day, the law is the law. The law made a determination. Do you trust the law, right, or do you trust the Times 20 years later?
Well, the law said he was guilty.
The law, exactly, OK? Right, so the law said he was guilty, they served a sentence, and he's done his time, and he's moved on, and he's been incredibly successful, and I'm very proud of that.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Great to have you on the programme. Thank you.
What Richard isn't telling you is that James kicked her repeatedly on the floor 4 times, and it took 2 security guards to drag him off. And as you watch this video further, you'll see that Richard has a habit of attacking institutions when they're against him and supporting them when they're with him.
Do you have policies on fighting racism?
Yes, we do.
What are they?
We're completely intolerant of intolerance.
No, but what's the policy? You said you have policies.
Well, that is the policy.
That's not a policy, that's just another phrase.
What's your definition of a policy?
A plan that a government can enact using the powers of the state or the exchequer, changing laws around discrimination, inequality, changing the education system, cracking down on discrimination.
And all of those follow from
plenty
our
of policies.
3 words.
I'm not even a politician.
All of those follow from our 3 words.
Okay.
And the stupidity doesn't end there. Have a listen to this interview with Julia Hartley-Brewer, where he talks about how we should end the war in Ukraine. Interestingly, he seems to mimic the words of Donald Trump. It's all about peace and stopping the death of people. Unfortunately, Richard gets tongue-tied when dealing with Julia, who just runs rings around him.
Most wars end up with some form of negotiation.
Most wars end with one side winning, actually.
Well, no, that's not the case. Most
That is the
wars,
case.
No, most wars end up with some form of negotiation to try and stop killing people, and I think it's...
No, they have a negotiation of talks after one side has won.
Perfectly reasonable for a new president to come in and say, we've actually got to... We've got to stop trying killing people and the devastation and destruction, and see whether or not some form of negotiation can work for everybody.
A negotiation where he's basically given away exactly what Donald Trump, what Putin wants. So you can have Crimea, you can have the Donbass. Ukraine's not going to be allowed to join NATO. What else does Putin want?
Who's doing the negotiating? President Zelensky alongside Donald Trump, or you? The answer is...
I bet it'd be better if I did it.
Maybe not. But at the end of the day, someone's got to start a negotiation. And
why? Why does someone have to start negotiations? Why don't we just give them enough weaponry so that Ukraine can win and defend
because
us?
we haven't got...
I thought you in Reform cared about national sovereignty and borders. You think borders matter, just not for Ukraine, one of our allies.
No, that's not the point at all. But at the end of the day, there's no point trying to pretend that you can give weapons when we haven't got the weapons. You can't pretend you can give the money if we haven't got the money. That's the reality, Julia, whether people like it or not. At some point, someone's got to have the courage to say, we've got to stop killing people. What Ukraine has done...
We're not killing people.
What Ukraine has done with our support is get themselves into a position where Russia clearly realises it cannot win. So at some point, someone's got to say, we've got to stop this. How are we going to stop it? Where's the negotiation?
Okay.
All of that is to play for. But the idea that you never negotiate, you just carry on writing cheques and carry on killing people, cannot last forever.
It's Russia that's killing people. If Russia stopped fighting, if Russia wanted to end the war, if Russia stopped fighting, Russia could just stop fighting. There wouldn't be a war. No one would be killed.
And that would be
great.
great.
Our job done.
Yeah,
well, why doesn't the West take that to Russia?
Ultimately, maybe that's what the negotiations are.
Which part of Britain would you give away if we were invaded and you wanted to negotiate
None at all.
peace?
None at all.
Oh, so we wouldn't give away any of Britain.
But
it's okay to give away a bit of Ukraine.
Hang on, it's not us giving it away, Julia. Right? It's Ukraine, and
Ukraine doesn't want to give it away.
Of course it doesn't. But ultimately, as everybody said, it is Zelensky's decision. But ultimately, we've got to stop killing people.
If we were invaded and our close allies in NATO, like the United States, basically supported us for a bit, but gave us just enough support so we could actually not lose, but we'd not enough to win.
Yeah.
And after 3 years, whoever was president of the United States said,
position for which to try and negotiate a solution.
So at which point Donald Trump, let me finish. Says, oh, well, we're going to have a negotiation. But we're going to let the Russians, whoever invaded us, keep part of territory. Just clarify. Just how much of British territory would you be willing to give away in those negotiations?
Let's just focus on Northern Ireland, chap. Ultimately, in Northern Ireland, there was a negotiation to stop the killing. It involved horrendous compromises that lots of people didn't want to make.
We didn't give away territory.
We stopped killing people.
We didn't give away territory.
That's also correct.
We didn't give away territory to invading force. That's a ridiculous analogy.
No, it's a completely valid analogy.
Sorry, who invaded Northern Ireland?
Wars stop when people stop killing people.
No, wars stop when one side is defeated.
Look.
Sorry, Have you heard of the Second World War?
Yes.
Did we negotiate the ending of the Second World War?
Have you heard of there are lots of other wars where ultimately people negotiate a peace. Otherwise, you just carry on. How long are we going to carry on with this?
Falklands.
Yeah, Falklands we won.
Oh, yeah. Well, we didn't just negotiate with Argentina and give them some of the Falklands.
No, but there's
Why
plenty of
not?
other-
Why not? That would have stopped the war, Richard. Why not?
Look, ultimately, we won that war. But there are other wars where it's a negotiated settlement.
Because it's not our problem. Except it will be our problem when
So-
Vladimir Putin thinks he can take any territory of any country in Europe that he darn well pleases.
And that's why the negotiation is about what is the strength of what is put in place to stop him going any further. That's why I've always said...
What's going to stop him going any further? We've just said you
That's
can
the whole
take
point of the
Crimea, you can
negotiation,
take the
Julia.
Donbass.
That's the whole point of the negotiation. Is Ukraine going to join NATO and therefore benefit
said
from the
no.
Article 4? Well, that's the point of the negotiation.
Well, there's no negotiation, is it? Is there? There's no negotiation. The Secretary
You
of State
clearly
has already
don't
said...
understand how President Trump works. He starts out in one position. That doesn't mean that's where he settles. The whole point of a negotiation, you set out positions and then you work out where
You
you're
know
going
what
to
you
finish.
don't do in a negotiation? You set up a position where you've given the other side everything that they want.
And that's not what I suspect. That's
literally
not-
what they've done in the last 24
I completely
hours.
disagree.
I just thought Reform cared about national borders.
We
and
do
national
absolutely
sovereignty.
care about
Just
national borders and
apparently not
sovereignty.
all of them.
But
Okay.
equally, we don't want to carry on killing people. We're not killing people. But ultimately, somehow, the war has got to stop. It's gone on for 3 years. How long do we keep it going? A decade? 2 decades?
How long would you fight for this country?
Until I'm dead.
Well, exactly. That's what the Ukrainian people would ideally do if they were given support.
But
that war
actually-
could have been won a long time
Have
ago
you-
if
have
we'd
you-
given support.
Yeah, but there are lots of Ukrainian people who would like to find a way to end this
Yeah,
war,
okay.
including the president.
Let's not use up all our time on this. I'm disappointed in
I'm
people
not
who believe in
disappointed.
national
It's all about
security. There
trying
we
to
are.
explore ways to stop killing
Right.
people.
Look, well, tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people. Then we can solve that problem like that.
Starting to see a pattern here. Richard doesn't seem to be the type of person that really thinks through what he says, but is happy to parrot things that Donald Trump says.
Given that the Vote Leave campaign has been found to have broken electoral law by the Electoral Commission, why should we respect the result of a referendum won by illegal means?
Well, firstly, it wasn't won by illegal means, right? There was a lawful referendum, right? Over 30 million people participated in that referendum. The votes were counted, and we won by over 1 million votes.
And then after
that's
it was
the reality.
Done, and then after it was done, you were fined
let's-
the maximum amount for overspending. That's cheating, some might say.
It's not cheating.
And you get a 70 grand
hang on.
fine.
Can we just?
How is that not cheating?
Just on the 70 grand that Leave EU was fined,
Yep.
you paid that fine.
Well, I don't know. I'm not involved in Leave.eu. I've no idea.
But you were at the time. The fine covers a period you were in charge of it.
I was a co-founder of it.
Yeah.
I genuinely
But it
don't
was
know.
fined
if they-
70 grand, so you can understand
But
why
hang
some
on.
Remainers say, come on, this isn't fair. One of the main groups campaigning got fined for overspending. Do you understand why people say that, at least?
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because Priti Patel, the current Home Secretary, asked the Electoral Commission to investigate why the Remain campaign set up 5 companies in the last month so they could spend an extra £1 million illegally. And the Electoral Commission wouldn't investigate. Why? Because it's deeply biased.
But just to be clear, Leave EU did pay a 70 grand fine for overspending in the new referendum campaign. No one's disputing that, are they?
Well, I don't know. Because
you don't know if they paid a 70 grand fine. It's pretty big news.
Because I'm not a director of it. I wasn't involved in it.
But you don't need to be involved in it to know what's happening in the news. It's a big story.
Yeah, what I do know
You
is
just missed it.
They've subsequently been exonerated, haven't they?
So they've got the 70 grand back?
Look, I told you, I don't know. What I do know is the Met Police... No, hang on.
No, you can't pick and choose what you know.
I can, because the Met Police...
No. You selectively... Suddenly you know about the story, suddenly you don't.
And his lack of understanding doesn't end there. For Richard, he doesn't seem to understand that putting pylons up is significantly cheaper than putting cables into the ground.
We need to upgrade the national grid. We need to build however many millions new homes. They've got to be serviced by cabling from the national grid. You agree?
That is a tiny amount relative to the amount of extra electricity transmission caused by the demand for net zero
renewables. You say you want to underground these
and hear me out.
transmission lines. No, hang on. You want to put these transmission lines
Yes, because we don't want to
underground.
blight our countryside and our environment. Let me come on to my constituency. There are three routes.
Just give me a second. The national grid say the cost of undergrounding transmission lines is between 10 and 20 times greater than overhead. Underground cables cost, they say, £12 million per kilometre. Where are you going to... And that works out, if you do the maths, an extra £7.2 billion. Where are you getting that from?
Have you read the report done by the National Energy Systems Operator for the East Anglia Network that confirms that actually the cost is equal when you take into account all of the costs over the medium term. So actually, it's not more expensive to put them below ground than above ground. And here's the point.
I'm going to quote that report at you because I have read that report.
Hang on.
Do you want to know what it really says?
Let me finish.
The National Energy System Operator Report.
In my constituency, National Grid has got 3 separate pylon routes proposals, right, with different consultations. There's no economies of scale. There's no coordination of those, and they're going to blight my constituency with hundreds of pylons, which are blighting the countryside, blighting the environment. That is the wrong thing to do. There's nothing environmentally sustainable about that,
You want to
is
put
there?
them underground. It's a huge additional cost. You cite that report that says actually it's cheaper. It doesn't say that. The National Energy System Operator Report found the proposal of underground cables was only cheaper in the event all other options were delayed until 2034. So it doesn't say it's cheaper.
It does, by a matter of years. They're going to be delayed anyway because of the planning disputes, because of the legal disputes. You've got county councils suing the National Grid. So absolutely, I'm afraid you've just literally reinforced my point that those pylons won't be built by 2034.
It
is absolutely saying.
It's absolutely not.
Tom,
As you can see, Richard seems to struggle with arguments and points put to him and seems to go off on tangents. So it's one thing to argue that he doesn't want the countryside wrecked with pylons, but that's not the point. The point is the money. And he does the same with solar panels versus fossil fuels. He doesn't seem to understand that we've been subsidising fossil fuels, and the same thing's being done with renewables, but he seems to think that fossil fuels are A-OK.
I'm just appalled because so much of that is false, it's lies. We have been subsidising and giving tax breaks to the fossil fuel industry, which has got so much money that they're quoted as saying they don't even know what to do with it. And all the fossil fuel companies have done is raise the prices. Richard, I believe you and your wife now have a place in Saudi where there were appalling flash floods in January.
Fiona, can I stop you there? It's my partner, Isabel Oakeshott. She lives in Dubai, not Saudi. I live in the United Kingdom. The growth and the investment and the jobs that the oil and gas industry and the success and the wealth that has created in the United Kingdom in the last 50 years has been enormous.
We've also subsidised oil and gas companies.
I'm sorry. Far from subsidised, they have created huge growth and jobs and investment.
So when do I get my subsidy back? What? As a taxpayer having paid into this stuff, when do I? Because the energy bills are going through the roof.
Well, that's exactly my point about the renewables. You're subsidising the renewables, the subsidy that your household,
oil and gas companies,
because they've created growth and that creates cheaper energy.
Every year there's less coal, there's less oil, but each year as well there are more cars, there are more trains, there are more things consuming those fossil fuels, which means that the prices go up. But with renewables, you don't have that problem. There is an abundance of sunshine and wind and hydro, which you can rely on to a better extent, to a better level than you do with fossil fuels. And we're not done, because here's Richard talking about Ireland and Northern Ireland.
You recently accused our Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, of hijacking the Brexit issue and claimed that the amount of trade crossing the Irish border was, to use your own words, and I quote, irrelevant. Can I say as a point of information, there is no such thing as an Irish land border. It is a UK border imposed on the island of Ireland. The Irish border is the sea. If you think it is irrelevant, can you now speak to the social and political implications to the people of Northern Ireland if a hard border is introduced, if you care so at all?
A picture tells 1,000 words, right? Think of a glass jar with 1,000 Smarties in it.
I was going to note your analogy, which was horrific, by the way.
Oh, hang on. 1,000 Smarties. Those Smarties represent all of the trade that goes across all the 28 countries in Europe. Okay? The trade that goes across that Irish border is between 1 and 2 Smarties. It is a tiny, tiny amount.
How dare you? This is not about economics. I've asked you about the social and political implications for the people of Northern Ireland if a hard border is introduced.
It's not going to be introduced because everybody has said it's not going to be.
When you say everyone's not said it's going to be, that's not what Jean-Claude Juncker has said. He said there has to be. We can't just have animals coming across the border without being checked.
You know better than the people of Northern Ireland, the politicians of the Republic of Ireland. And
everybody has said they're not going to impose a hard border.
The head of the police force in Northern Ireland says he worries this could be a trigger for violence. Is he part of a Remain conspiracy as well?
I don't... Look, the reality is...
Or you know more about policing in Northern Ireland than the head of the police?
No, of course I don't. But there is no reason for that to be the case.
So when Assistant Chief Constable Barbara Gray, who heads up the counter-terrorism unit in Northern Ireland, says, we predict that a 6 to 12-month period, if there's a no-deal Brexit, there could be an upsurge in violence. That doesn't worry you at all?
Look, of course, everybody should be worried if, you know...
You don't sound very worried. You just made an analogy about Smarties, and we're talking about the return of violence.
I used an economic point.
But we're not talking economic. That's what let's
see what I mean about him bringing up irrelevant points. And the damage continues because he tries to defend Nigel on some of the racist comments that Nigel has made.
He has a long history of complaining about foreign languages being spoken on the train, Romanians moving in next door to him, immigrants causing traffic jams, a powerful Jewish lobby. Can you really blame people for calling Farage as a leader of your party and your party itself xenophobic, or even racist, based on that kind of language?
Yeah, I just fundamentally don't agree. I mean, you know, you only look at the Brexit Party, right? We've got more diversity amongst our MEPs than any other party in the European Parliament.
That doesn't cancel out. If you have lots of black candidates, it doesn't mean you can make comments about Romanians. It's not like a get-out-of-jail-free card that you get.
If we were a racist party, would we have that diversity in...
I didn't say you're a racist party. I said,
you just inferred it.
I said, can you blame people for thinking you're racist when your leader says he has problems with Romanians moving in next door to him?
Yeah, I do blame people.
People say, they look at that and they say that's racist. You're saying they're wrong to say that. I'm saying, fine.
I don't
Why
think
are
that's
they
racist.
You don't
we are not a racist party.
Do you have a problem with the Romanians moving in next door to you?
Basically, no. I mean, you know...
Okay, no, I'm just checking.
Yeah.
Because he does, I'm just checking. But it's not just Farage. Your former colleague and party leader, Catherine Blakelock, who co-founded the Brexit Party, was forced to resign because she said Islam is equal to slavery, Muslim men were impregnating white British girls to create Muslim babies, and she retweeted a leading UK neo-Nazi dozens of times. She recently compared Clapham to the Caribbean and said the Tower Hamlets look like Pakistan.
Yeah,
the founder of your party.
And those are, you know, those are outrageous things to say, and that's why she left the party almost as immediately the moment it was set up, when those things were discovered.
Which credit to your party for getting rid of her. But then she's the founder of your party. That's a bit dodgy. She's not just some random passerby.
Yeah, but that's why we got rid of her.
But why did you let her set up the party? You didn't know she was a racist?
I wasn't involved in that moment. Nigel chose someone to set up the party. Maybe he didn't know what she was saying or tweeting or doing.
Now, that politicians constantly talk of betrayal, of traitors, of surrender. Isn't it irresponsible for your party leader, Nigel Farage, to talk about picking up a rifle if Brexit isn't delivered, of taking a knife to civil servants in London? Is this not dangerous stuff, Richard?
Look, the word surrender is a normal part of the English language, just like betrayal. If we can't use simple language like that, then actually you are preventing free speech. You know,
no one's banning you from saying it. No one's banning you from saying it. We're saying when you hear women in Parliament saying they're getting death threats citing the Prime Minister's words, doesn't that make you feel grotesque?
The Joe Cox murder was absolutely hideously shocking and appalling. I've never said.
Don't we want to avoid another one happening by all moderating our language?
Of course.
How about picking up a rifle and knifing civil servants?
What about Ed Davies saying he wanted to decapitate the Prime Minister?
When Ed Davies comes on the show, I'll ask him about it. I'm asking you about Nigel Farage.
Look.
We can do whataboutism all day. I'm asking you to comment.
I use my own language. I'm my own person. I'm not responsible for other people's comments.
You're chair of the Brexit Party. You actually are responsible for what Nigel Farage says. He's the leader of your party. That's how it works. Otherwise, you don't have to be the chair of it.
In politics, you don't dictate what other people say.
You don't, but you have a comment on it. Let's just be clear. Do you disagree with the language of rifle and knifing?
Look, it's not language I would have used.
Why?
Right? I'd choose different language. That's absolutely fine.
Is what I'm wondering. Why?
Because I'm my own person.
Because there's something wrong with what Farage said, right?
Everybody's different.
Okay. So you're OK with that language? I'm just trying to get clear. Are you OK with it or not OK?
Everybody's different. I would use different language. That's fine.
He says he wouldn't use that language, that it's not his cup of tea. And yet...
Parliament of the United Kingdom, which is sovereign, as we've established.
You have surrendered lack of trust, betrayal of trust in democracy in this country.
Again, he likes institutions until they don't do what he wants.
Given we're in this chaos right now, and given that, there's this argument over who is legitimate, where does sovereignty lie, as we're finding in this conversation, why not then let the public decide how to resolve this mess that we're in by holding another vote? I mean, if you'd lost the last referendum campaign 52% to 48%, instead of winning it, as you did, 52% to 48%, you would have been calling for another referendum now too, wouldn't you?
No, we wouldn't, and we wouldn't be where we are. I mean, that's just a complete nonsense.
Really? Well, why did Nigel Farage, the leader of your party, say in May 2016, a month before the referendum, in a 52-48 referendum, this would be unfinished business by a long way?
I don't know. I'm not Nigel Farage. I didn't hear him say it. Look, the reality is...
All right. The way, Richard, hold on. The way that quotes work, whether you heard them or not, is irrelevant.
Yeah,
he did say it to the Mirror. He's never denied saying it.
Fine.
He said it would be unfinished business by a long way. You can't just disown the leader of your party when he says something awkward.
The way democracy works is that you have elections every 5 years, right? So if you lose an election, you try and do better the next time. But you have a thing called losers' consent.
Yes. And your party leader said he would not abide by that if you lost.
Democracy only works in this country if losers accept they lost.
Completely agree.
Okay?
And yet your leader said, if the Remain campaign... I'm quoting your leader, I'm not giving you any of my views. If the Remain campaign wins 2/3 to 1/3, that ends it. You didn't win 2/3 to 1/3, so it's not over, according to Nigel Farage.
I don't have to agree with every word that he said. Look, if you want to review the referendum 10, 15 years down the track, that's fine. Happy, but you have to implement the will of the people first time round. In the same way, when you have
the will of the people? So I'm saying the will of the people is not etched in stone. People get to change their minds.
We don't have a general election and then say, oh, I didn't like the results, so can we have another vote?
Really? We just had one in 2017 and we might have one next month. That's in 2 years.
But the reality is...
Tell me what you really think about Richard by leaving a comment. As usual, thank you for getting to this part of the video. If you did, then you should have liked the video, so hit that like and subscribe button. And to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters, thank you so much for all of your support. It keeps this channel going and growing. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.